Hey, welcome to H3 Live. You're here with Trish and Steve. Hey, Steve Bose.
Hey, Trish, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am well. I'm feeling great. The sun is out, so it's a good thing.
How warm is it where you are? You're in Lincoln,
I
right?
don't know. Um,
Lincoln is always super windy and super cold this time of year. So I know because I used to live there. I hope it's not that bad for you.
it's nice. Yeah, the sun's been out. It's been breezy, but it's good to get away a little bit. And yeah, we're having a good time here, but also doing a lot of really cool things. We recorded the podcast yesterday. That'll be launching
Good.
soon on our Workplace Movie Hall of Fame series, which was a ton of fun.
That's right. So for anybody who wants to listen, it'll be out in a couple days, but we watched Spotlight. So if you haven't seen Spotlight, give it a look and then listen to the podcast, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really fun. I don't know, I'm staying in because here just north of Denver, we're going to get hit with a ton of snow, it sounds like. So,
Oh,
up in the mountains are getting 2 to 3 feet as we speak. So, by this afternoon or tonight, I'm at the base of the mountains, so we'll get some, not that much, but
yeah.
yeah, snow, cold, I'm staying in. Hunker down.
Yeah, I know you've been kind of involved a little bit through stuff your kids are up to, both one recent college graduate, one soon to be college graduate,
That's
which
right.
is the entry level hiring market for recent grads and
Yes,
navigating through that and sort of helping guide them a little bit. I know we've talked about it some, and I think you've talked about it on the show or the podcast, but
right.
interestingly enough, there are tons of challenges, right, in entry level hiring right now, particularly in tech roles, but in other kinds of roles as well that are
Mhm.
more traditional white collar jobs, if you will. And there's been a lot of layoffs, right, through many tech companies and other companies and financial services, banks, distribution companies, et cetera. AI threatening entry level jobs, right? Companies saying to themselves, well, you know, AI is maturing, it's getting better, and the kinds of things perhaps that we can turn over to AI and to automation are many of
Mhm.
those tasks that we might ask a junior employee or a new hire to do,
Right.
and maybe investing less in internships or apprenticeships, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of pressure, right, on entry level hiring. Before I get to the second part of this story I wanted to share, does that jive with either your sort of anecdotal experience or the experience as your kids and maybe their peers, talk to you and the things you're hearing?
No, it completely jives. I think they're a little frustrated that it doesn't move faster in terms of getting a job fresh out of college. It could be the time of year. Obviously, if you're a winter graduate, that has something to do with it. Firms are normally, like you mentioned, having layoffs, not hiring. So
Mhm.
that's a little bit of it. But I think too, just I don't know that I'm hearing they're afraid of like AI might take some of those more task related roles. I honestly see it, hopefully I'm right, as a benefit to new hires, whether that's new hires coming out of high school, maybe going into a trade, or new hires who are coming out of college, going into, like you said, a white collar job. I think a lot of it is when you get a new hire, or at least I've been guilty of this, you don't even know what to give them. So you give them these more menial routine tasks. And I remember in professional services, we would often give them something that we already knew the answer to, right?
Mhm.
As a mode of training people, right? So I think what it's going to do, it certainly will have pressure on these students coming into the workforce. It's going to put a lot of pressure on leaders because we're going to
Mhm.
have to get real clear on what work they can do. And I almost wonder, like, they're gonna have to come in doing higher level work than our generation had to, which could be a good thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you I mean, you've got a son that is right in that age range too. Like, what are
Yeah,
you
I think
seeing with
it's
that?
interesting because there's a lot of pressure, of course, right, on companies, and certainly any company that's public, but even private companies or private equity companies, lots of pressure on, right, margins, quarterly results, et cetera, et cetera. The idea that we can maybe have fewer employees in a certain cohort in a certain function and
Yeah,
replace some of those tasks or many of those tasks with AI, it's compelling, right? It's a
it
compelling
is.
story. The danger certainly is for organizations who embrace that approach and really reduce or even eliminate a lot of their new hire. Think about, Trish, you spent a lot of time in professional services, right?
Mhm.
That there was an annual cadence, right, of bringing in
Oh,
a group
yeah.
of new hires every year in the spring or the early summer, right? The
Mhm.
fresh graduate bunch, right, would come in, and
Sure.
but there was a very kind of proscribed method to that madness, right? We're going to bring them in, train them up. Some of them are going to advance, some of them are not, but right.
Right.
But it was a pipeline, right? And you guys
Sure.
understood it pretty well. And lots of companies do, right? And it makes a lot of sense, right? In many ways. If you're going to start really cutting back that entry point
Mhm.
significantly even, then what does that mean down the line, right? For manager, managers are trying to develop, leaders are trying to develop, expertise you're trying to acquire, et cetera, et cetera. And it's scary, right? And some companies. So the reason I brought this up, I looked into it a little bit because I read the story the other day. My pal from IBM, Nicole Lamoureux, who's the CHRO of IBM,
Right.
who I've interviewed a couple of times, right, at different events, and you can find
Mhm.
those videos on the YouTube page. But they announced at IBM a 3x, a three times increase in the US in entry level hiring, right? So they're going
Wow.
against the grain, right? Especially for a
I
tech
love it.
company. And Nicole was quoted in the piece I read. She said, it's for the jobs that everybody's saying or everybody's telling them that AI could just do, right?
Right.
And they're doing it very intentionally because, in her opinion, and others as well, but she's one of the leaders in sort of the intersection of AI and HR. Is that, hey, if the companies gut that pipeline,
Mhm.
they're going to fall behind eventually, right? Their long term impacts on wiping away entry level hiring, in large measure. So I thought that was really interesting. And the jobs will be different, of course. And she made some comments
Right.
about there'll be more client facing, client engagement, more
Mhm.
collaborative jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So the jobs are going to change. They acknowledge that, right? Not that
Sure.
we're not going to admit, we're not going to make any changes because of AI, but I thought that was interesting. Now we'll see if other firms follow that lead. Lots of people do like to follow, the trends versus step into them at first. But I thought that was super interesting, and I'll be keeping an eye on that story. And maybe we can get Nickel back on one of the podcasts at some point to talk about it.
I think that yeah, mark your calendar to do that so that we can sort of see the results. I I tend to lean toward the way Nickel and IBM are handling this too. I would not drastically change my hiring process at this point because again, even as people who are currently in the workforce, we don't even know how to use AI for the things that are going to be most impactful and effective in our roles.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that HR usually moves a little too slow for my taste. In this case, I think moving a little more intentionally, taking that pause, making sure you're really looking at the jobs. And like I said, I think a lot of times in these companies, we wind up giving new hires just really menial things to do anyway, and they're bored. And then we kind of joke like, well, that was recruiting when we told you were going to do all these exciting things. I don't know. I think now we're going to be pushed to give them some of those exciting things right out of the gate. So
hmm Yeah.
hopefully it'll be a good move, right?
Trish, I was working on something from another project we've got going on, and it was around compliance, where we've talked about a lot.
Mhm.
I do think that in 2026, we're going to see a lot more focus on compliance, perhaps than we did in the last few years. Like, we like to ignore it, we like to forget about it. I think it's coming to the forefront again, and there's plenty of reasons why. Right? There's increased rules around pay transparency, both in the recruiting
Mhm.
process and in the reporting process in many locations. AI regulation expansion and the differences in AI regulations across many
Right,
jurisdictions, I-9s and what's going on with visas and working authorizations, right? It's a moving target at best, and also one that's fraught with controversy, but also, risk certainly to employers as well. I think
right.
risk management, governance, all back in a major way. Compliance is like the new black, I think, this year. And I don't think I ever would have said that as someone who's been more into the new and latest tech most of my
Yeah.
career. I think it's such a big thing this year.
I think it's time though, because, especially for HR professionals, it's something that's on your mind daily, right? You're hiring people all the time. Compliance is always on your mind. It's how
Yeah.
you get the work right. right? It's paying people properly, and it's, like you mentioned I-9s. It's funny because, this is something that has been around for so, so long, and yet it still seems like it's really complex.
Hmm.
And I think that now with technology and compliance, it's gonna make it better understood more than ever before,
Yeah.
because we didn't really have a good way to track all of these things. I mean, you mentioned, and obviously it could be a touchy subject, but right, people on different visas and so forth. But if you're a business that needs that specific help, you need a way to really get your hands around that. I've tried to do it in Excel over the years. It's not easy. So yes, I think it's a real opportunity for those firms that have been creating solutions around compliancy. Uh, and I think it's going to just really make everyone stronger from an organizational standpoint when they
Yeah.
know that they're doing things properly, because then the employees will have more opportunities.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. And between AI and compliance, and then maybe for next week's show, we can talk about, you know, showing up for employees and care for employees, because I think that's probably the third biggest story this year in 2026, after AI and after sort of compliance and regulatory things,
Yeah.
is people's well-being in general, but also how organizations have to really think differently about well-being.
Yeah.
I think that's probably number three.
I agree, and it starts at the top too. So,
Yeah.
who are the people not taking care of themselves? It's your leadership. We know this, and the older you get, it doesn't mean you suddenly understand how to do it any better. We're not always, setting a good example for the people that work with us, and, especially if you're in a large organization, I think there's a lot of room to improve.
Indeed.
So, well, good. Well, I'm glad we got together today. Hopefully, you get outside and enjoy some things around Lincoln,
I will
Nebraska.
try.
Anything on your agenda that you must see, or have you already done anything that was really fun there?
I'm gonna go get some vegan food, I think, today. That's my
Ooh.
plan.
At Rutabagas? Where are you
I don't
going?
know. I can't remember the name, but
Okay, you'll have to shout them
somewhere.
out the next time we talk then, because there are some really fantastic vegan restaurants in Lincoln. And yeah, one of them, Rutabagas, I loved. So miss it terribly. Have some
Mm.
fun on my behalf. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening in. And please be sure to share it with a friend and let us know if there's any topics that you really want us to cover. Or if you want to come on and talk with us, we are happy to have you on as a guest. So thanks again, and we will see you next time.